Hello friends, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. You are greatly appreciated. This week we're going to discuss a missing persons case that remains unsolved. As always, if you or anyone you know has information regarding this case, the contact information will be in the description of the video. But for now, I ask you to join me as we talk about the disappearance of Hyung Jong Song, or Cindy as she was known by friends. Cindy Song was born on February 25, 1980 in Seoul, South Korea. Cindy grew up in South Korea. However, by the time she turned 15 in 1995, her parents decided to send her to Virginia in the United States to live with her aunt and uncle for better education opportunities. After graduating high school, Cindy was accepted into the Pennsylvania State University, where she majored in integrative arts, a course that combined engineering, communications, and science. It was a very student-designed program where she was able to choose her own curriculum. She was passionate about the arts. She wrote a blog about her love for all forms of arts, which included film, music, photography, and dance. Cindy was very independent and hardworking. She juggled 2 part-time jobs between difficult courses. Cindy disciplined herself to stay focused with the goal of graduating in the spring of 2002. Besides work, Cindy did maintain a pretty active social life with friends describing her as attractive and kind. She had a personality that meshed well with others. Cindy was really just thriving in all aspects of university life. On October 31st, 2001, Cindy decided to go out to celebrate the holiday and just let loose a little bit. She, along with friends Stacy Pyack and Lisa Kim, attended a costume party at the Players nightclub located on College Avenue. Cindy dressed up as a bunny. She put on a pink sleeveless shirt with a rabbit design, white tennis skirt, brown leather knee-high boots, bunny ears, and a cottontail to finish it off. She put on a red knee-length hooded parka, grabbed her backpack and purse, then headed for the club. She met up with her friends at the party where the group drank and had a great time together until 2 a.m. when they left. However, after leaving the club, they weren't ready to part ways, so they all went to a friend's apartment where they played video games until 4 a.m. After they were finished, Cindy's friend dropped her off outside of the Park Apartments on Clinton Avenue where she lived with her roommate. It was shortly after 4 a.m. on Thursday, November 1st, 2001, and the last time anyone saw her. Cindy's roommate Catherine returned later that day from an extended trip to Philadelphia, where she was visiting family. She expected Cindy to be home since the two made plans to catch up with each other before going out with friends. But the apartment was empty and locked from the outside, so she figured Cindy must have gone out and would be back soon. However, it would be 2.5 days before she started to grow concerned. This wasn't uncommon for Cindy and Catherine to go days without seeing each other, mostly due to their busy, conflicting schedules. But when Cindy's boss at the Seoul Korean Garden restaurant stated she missed her shift, Catherine called the police. By this point, it was the weekend, and unfortunately, patrol officers were handling the calls, and a potential missing persons report was not at the top of the list. 2 days would pass before a lead detective, Brian Sprinkle, got Cindy's case. Cindy's apartment was investigated on November 5th, 4 days after her disappearance. Nothing about the apartment looked out of place, and it was apparent that Cindy had at least made it inside. They discovered her backpack, and inside of her backpack was her cell phone, which, according to Catherine, wasn't an unusual place since it was too large for her purse. They also discovered a set of false eyelashes she wore as part of her costume on the counter. The only thing that appeared to be missing was a small crossbody purse which held Cindy's credit cards and IDs. There were no signs of forced entry. Evidence found throughout the apartment showed Cindy had full intentions of continuing life as usual. They discovered concert tickets for Britney Spears that was set to take place in a couple of days, and a receipt for a new computer that was due to be delivered. Her phone records were checked and no phone calls were made, as were her emails, where nothing suspicious was found. Credit card transactions were pulled and also showed no activity. Search parties were formed consisting of volunteers and classmates to search the nearby woods, but there was no trace of Cindy. Reportedly, she had no travel plans, and it was very uncharacteristic of her to leave without telling anyone. It was clear the girl didn't just run away from her life, especially after interviewing her close friends who were ruled out as suspects. From all accounts, Cindy was upbeat and happy about her future. Cindy's mother, Ban-soon, and her brother, Ki-hoon, arrived several days after being notified of her disappearance and immediately became involved in the investigation. This included her going into Cindy's apartment just days after the initial police search to clean it up, potentially destroying any physical evidence. And since Cindy was an international student, the FBI and the Korean consulate were involved within weeks, and her case received international attention. Ban-soon explained to detectives that her daughter could have possibly taken her own life due to a bad breakup a month before. Richard Che and Cindy dated for several months and became serious enough to get an apartment together off campus. But sadly, the romance did not last, with Richard abruptly ending the relationship and moving out of the apartment in September of 2001. Cindy naturally was heartbroken but determined to move on. And according to her roommate, who had a good bond with Cindy, Catherine stated Cindy started therapy, was on medication, and writing about her struggles with relationships, self-love, and mental health. And the weeks leading up to her disappearance were on the up and up. Cindy had turned in an application for spring graphic design internship, and she just had a lot to look forward to. Catherine didn't believe Cindy had anything to do with her disappearance. Police worked several theories, including a violent boyfriend being responsible, or she was sold into a trafficking ring, which both options were ruled out. They also looked at whether it could be drug-related, since Cindy made entries in her diaries about her and her friends experimenting, but there was no evidence to show Cindy used drugs that night, and friends defended the claim, stating these were typical college experiences. After speaking to Catherine, they did learn that Cindy would often walk to a 24-hour store around the corner called Giant at all hours of the night. This lead was looked into since most stores have surveillance cameras, which this store did, but by the time police arrived to view the footage, the store already copied over that specific day's footage, leading them back to square one. However, they felt it was more plausible that Cindy may have been abducted either on her way to or from the store. Police knew two things were sure though. Cindy made it home that night, and something or someone made her leave her apartment willingly. Days after Cindy was reported missing, an eyewitness came forward to tell police that a woman who looked like Cindy was dragged kicking and screaming into a car in Philadelphia's Chinatown district, nearly 200 miles away from Cindy's apartment. The witness claimed she attempted to help the poor woman, but the man responsible told her to go away since the matter didn't concern her. From this encounter, police composed a composite sketch of the abductor. He was described as having olive to light brown complexion with medium-length hair. The man wasn't considered a suspect in Cindy's case, and police just wanted to ask him some questions. However, they never tracked him down. It was later determined by investigators to be a false claim due to the witnesses' reports being conflicting and unable to be pursued. Cindy's mother found fault with Detective Sprinkle's investigation into her daughter's disappearance. So much so, she and fellow classmates, alumni of Penn State, and friends of Cindy's put together the Coalition for the Search of Cindy Song. The coalition complained about the lack of progress in the investigation. By this point, it had been 3 months since she vanished, and police were no closer to having answers. The case was plagued with very few leads, which led many members to believe that the Ferguson Township Police Department and the FBI were not using all available resources to find Cindy. But investigators claimed they were doing everything humanly possible. The coalition was tired of being unheard, so they hired a man named Jin Han to represent them and their concerns. The coalition held a press conference where they accused the police of negligence and racial bias in Cindy's case. They claimed the case of missing Alicia Kozakevich was a similar scenario, and the girl was found in just days, whereas they didn't have a clue where Cindy could be. Brian Sprinkles, however, responded to the complaint stating, quote, "It's a cultural thing. I mean, they were upset and frustrated. They didn't understand how things worked here in the U.S., end quote. Cindy's mother even petitioned to the governor's office in Harrisburg with over 15,000 signatures demanding the state police take over the investigation full-time, but nothing came of this. Eventually, Ferguson Township Police Department quit communicating with Song's family out of frustration, stating, quote, "We had cultural differences, we had language barriers, and the other issue we had is missing persons cases aren't crimes, so without a crime you can't even get a search warrant. You can't get court orders," end quote. Detective Sprinkles consulted with Carla Barron, a nationally recognized psychic, in August of 2002, hoping for anything to point them in a direction. Carla claimed she'd seen 3 to 4 men that were with Cindy. She believed she was abducted and claimed to see her being loaded into a vehicle, and it wasn't long before she crossed over. Per the detective, though, Carla gave a lot of information for them to think about, but nothing helpful at the time. In an attempt to drum up more leads, Cindy's case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries at the end of 2002, which did result in a renewed public interest and a bunch of unsubstantiated claims. Then, in July of 2003, information regarding Cindy came from an unlikely resource. A man named Paul Weekly was convicted of burglary in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, and in order to reduce his charges, he agreed to give police information pertaining to Cindy's case. Paul explained that he had no first-hand knowledge of Cindy's death, just the story allegedly given by one of the men involved, Hugo Selensky. According to Paul, Hugo, who was currently serving time for a bank robbery, was working with another man named Michael Kurkowski. Michael Kurkowski was a pharmacist who ran an illegal drug ring. One night, while Hugo and Michael were out cruising the streets, they stumbled upon a young woman. They thought she was a working girl and were not interested in paying for services, so they abducted her instead. According to Paul, this woman was Cindy Song. Hugo and Michael then took her to Hugo's home, where apparently she was assaulted a number of times over the course of a few days, and then left to die in a walk-in safe. They then took her body and buried her on Hugo's 6-acre property. Paul claimed that as a trophy, Michael kept the girl's bunny ears, and this angered Hugo to the point where he killed Michael and Michael's girlfriend Tammy and buried them as well. Of course, the allegations were a shock, and it was even more shocking when Hugo was questioned and confessed to Cindy's death. Except he claimed Michael was the one who actually took the girl's life. Paul told investigators if they dug up Hugo's yard, they would find Cindy, Michael, and Tammy's bodies. Hugo's home and yard were searched, where they unearthed the charred remains of 5 people, with 2 of them being Michael and Tammy. However, none of them were Cindy, and Paul claimed she was buried elsewhere on the property. With the discovery of Michael and Tammy, police couldn't be sure who, if anyone, was responsible for Cindy's disappearance. Hugo was charged with the murders of both Michael and Tammy. He was found guilty and sentenced in 2015 to life in prison. Since Paul swore Cindy was somewhere on the property, they continued to excavate, and by January of 2014, authorities announced they recovered the badly destroyed remains of 7 more people, for a total of 12. But again, none of these bodies were Cindy. Despite not finding her body, Hugo has not been ruled out as a suspect in her disappearance. With the assistance of the FBI, Ferguson Township authorities obtained DNA samples from Cindy's parents. These samples were submitted and are now part of the National Database for Missing Persons and Unidentified Remains. It has now been nearly 21 years since Cindy Song disappeared without a trace. Inside the Ferguson Township Police Department sits 21 binders of information detailing Cindy and her case, which remains unsolved to this day. If you or anyone you know has information pertaining to the disappearance of Cindy Song on November 1st, 2001, please contact the Ferguson Township Police Department at 814-237-1172. Hi friends, thank you so much for watching the video. I invite you to share your thoughts below in the comments section so we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. So I do want to mention that I have a special project kind of coming out soon. I don't know the exact date yet because the person I'm working with she's working on her half. So as soon as I have more information, I think you guys will be excited about it, because I think we have a lot of mutual viewers. So hopefully you guys like it. Fingers crossed. I'm excited. She's excited. We're all excited. So hopefully that'll be coming to you very soon. But as always, if you made it this far, please know I appreciate your time, love, and support. I wouldn't be here without all of you. I hope you have a great week ahead of you. Stay safe out there, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, friends.